And
Khalid is
down.
88. He just won his election. He's 88 years old. He'll turn 89 in October. The next time 4 years come around, he's 92 years old.
He might run again.
All rise. Quiet, please.
Welcome back to Off the Floor with Brian Cunningham. Today I am in Washington, D.C. So we moved from Albany to D.C. and I am here with my man, Representative Jeremy Gray from the great state of Alabama. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast, man.
I'm glad to be here, man.
Look, I'm happy to have you on. It's been 4 years since you and I have been here in D.C. meeting at the Future Caucus. Talk about the Future Caucus. What is this? Why are we here in D.C.?
Yeah, Future Caucus, they have a summit each and every year. It's a big summit. It's usually in the summertime. Years before they had it in different cities, but they just thought that DC was the spot, right?
Yeah.
DC in the summer, there's a lot going on.
Absolutely.
And so it's really to convene young lawmakers together to talk about different issues, give them spotlight, let them sit on panels and kind of talk about issues that they care about. Is also a component of wraparound services. How can we help you? Are you trying to be an influencer? Do you need more media coverage? So they really tap into whatever you need as a young lawmaker. And when you think about being up and coming and not really knowing the legislative process, Future Caucus really, they brand that as something that they do, and they lay the foundation for that.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
Now, you've been a co-chair for the Future Caucus for how long now?
Oh, wow. I don't even remember. It's been a while. More than 4 years for sure.
Wow. And I'm just coming. This is my first year as a co-chair, which is crazy because I've been coming for 4 years, been involved, been kind of putting my foot in the water, taking it out.
Exactly.
But really, like you said, I've enjoyed the bonding. I think more importantly for me, being somebody from New York where things seem to move so quickly at times, being able to get perspective from colleagues from across the country has been really, really insightful, particularly folks like you who represent in the Deep South, man. So how long you been a state lawmaker?
8 years. So 2018.
Okay.
So this is I'm going into my third term. I had no opposition going into the primary of the general election.
No opposition?
No opposition.
Oh man, you must be doing your thing out there. I had a little race this year. I had to watch my big one.
So I'm going into it'll be 9 years next year. Yeah.
Copy. So. And what made you get into being a state lawmaker? It feels like, as a young person, somebody with an athletic background, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
What made this the deciding factor that you wanted to do this in your life?
Yeah. In 2015, I was playing Canadian football in Saskatchewan. And, sometimes you once you get done, it's like, what I'm going to do next. And a lot of times you have to get back to the basics. And a lot of times it's like going home, figuring it out, going back to your roots and just kind of figure out what's your next move. And so I was just there trying to figure it out. And I just stayed, right? I built a business. I built a nonprofit, took my great-grandfather's land and built a nonprofit. And I just kind of stayed around because I feel like you can live anywhere if you have purpose. If you have no purpose, Opelika, Alabama is probably not the place you want to live, right? Not for someone who's 32, 30 years old. You don't want to do that. So I just kept building on different things, and I just saw hey, this city needs representation. People need a voice. I'm already doing things in the advocacy space with nonprofits and just kind of being a community organizer. What could I do more? And so it became one of them things that I just wanted to be a solution to the problems that were going on in my community. And the opportunity just presented itself because my predecessor, who held the seat from 1994 to 2018.
Oh, wow.
He passed away suddenly in a car accident. And, leadership is one of those things sometimes. Maybe you don't want to be a leader. Sometimes people are called to be a leader. And I just kind of took that leap of faith and just stepped in. Didn't really know much about politics or what I wanted to do in the space, but I did know I wanted to be an effective leader.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Now, I know you mentioned earlier that you also played Canadian football, you said?
Yeah.
What's Canadian football? How's
So
that different from American
it's
football?
literally the NFL of Canada, right?
Okay, copy.
It's the same thing.
So there's still contact?
It's still contact.
All right.
The only difference is that the fields are bigger, right? And you have more players. So in NFL, you have 11 men. The CFL, you have 12 men. The field is bigger and longer, and there's running motion with receivers. So it's no such thing as a false start and things of that nature. So it's just more of a high impact, high scoring game which is what the NFL is becoming anyway. So it's kind of like similar. And Canadians will tell you that football started there first, right? And so it's like
they know how to take a hit in Canada. I can tell you that much. Now, no, it's funny though. You mentioned like high impact sports. You talk about the field being bigger. You talk about like the high impact nature of the sport. It kind of reminds me of the legislative body in some respects, right? Some legislative bodies are huge, like New York. We have 213 lawmakers in the Senate and the Assembly. How many members represent in the Alabama State House, in both houses?
Yeah, 105 in the House and 35 in the Senate. So it's 140 members total.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you find like there's a lot of parallels between your time as an athlete and some of the things and lessons you learned from being an athlete and how they transfer into your lawmaking?
Yeah, it's a direct correlation. When you talk about being on a team, whether it was high school, you had almost like 80 people on the team, or in college where you had about 100, or even in a professional realm, you've always been around a lot of people, right? So a lot of different personalities, a lot of people from different backgrounds, different religions, really different thought processes. And so that is kind of just naturally helped when you got in the legislature, because at the end of the day, yes, it's about passing bills, but it's also about building relationships with people. And that is the core. If we understand that, like, you can be intelligent you can be intelligent in all the ways, but you may not ever be able to pass the bill, because you have to build relationships. You have to talk to people. You have to find commonalities and all those things. And that's a part of football. Yeah. Right? I may have a teammate from California, we have nothing in common, but we find those commonalities. And one of the things is that we want to win. Well, we're going to sweat on the field together, and we're going to build a bond. And so I think lawmaking is the same way. At the end of the day, we may be D's and R's, but at the end of the day, we're trying to move Alabama forward. And we're in this competition with other states, right? And so,
So it's interesting, because one of the things that I think about is like every lawmaker has this defining moment that reminds you why you're there. Yeah. What's that moment for you? What was that moment like when you realized, like, not only did I get elected and you got reelected, and clearly nobody wanted to run against you because you're doing such a damn good job in Alabama, but what was that defining moment for you that was like, yep, this is the reason why I'm doing this? Yeah,
it actually started before I even set one foot in the legislative process. Before I even went to the well, before I went to the State House, it was, we started session my first year of the quadrennium on March the 5th. And 2 days before that, March 3rd, 2 Category 4 tornadoes hit my district at once, killing 23 people. And so even before I even stepped foot into any building, passed any bill, leadership really showed up, because it was like being on the ground. How do we raise funds? How do we get people housing? Is FEMA going to help? Can we get the president here? Like, all of this is kind of happening, and I've never been here before, but I'm showing up, right? Yeah. And, I had colleagues who called me, this particular senator on the Republican side. He was like, hey, you showing poise that I didn't even know people would have. I mean, you have colleagues that's been here longer than you that are panicking, and you're showing up. And I think that's the point in time when I was like, yeah, I think I belong. I hadn't passed any bill, hadn't spoken at the mic yet, but I was like, I belong, because I'm doing the work, I'm showing up, I'm doing the interviews, I'm just jumping in. It's like next man up in football. Hey, I'm not a starter, but I want to start.
You're not in a red shirt either.
Teammates get hurt. I got to go in the game. So it was the same component. And from there, I just think my career just took off on a trajectory that I didn't even recognize, or even had a thought process that I was going to be at this particular point. I was just glad to be there. But now it's like I have motion, I'm doing things, I'm in leadership. And so that is kind of kudos to, you never know sometimes. It's a process.
It's interesting because you talk a lot about bipartisanship. And when you think about a state like Alabama, at least, again, I'm from New York City, and we have our own views on the rest of the world. We think we are the 51st state of America in New York. I mean, Brooklyn might be the 52nd state, quite frankly, if we're being honest, right? But the reality is, like, what is it like being the minority party? And somebody who's so effective, and someone who constantly reaches across the aisle? How does that work for you in terms of that? What's that process like in terms of, you talk about relationships? How do you build those things?
Yes, it can be tough, right? You essentially, I'm a minority, you minority. Like, we're people of color, right? We've always been essentially, not necessarily like if you think you're in a position that you're lesser than, but from a worldview, right? We have to work 2 or 3 times harder. We have to be better.
Yeah.
If you have, one of our counterparts have 1 degree, we have to have 3. It's like all these things that
Unspoken
you
rules.
have to have, right? Yeah. And so I think it's a little easier when you always kind of operated from a minority standpoint. And I think when you think about negotiation and things of that nature, how do you become an asset? That's how I look at things, right? Maybe being a minority, but there are things that I know, there are expertise that I have around different issues, or if I don't have it, I'm gonna learn about it, and I'm gonna try to figure out how I can be of substance. And so that's kind of how I'm able to be effective in a minority. It doesn't always work, if there are certain things like voting bills or these red meat issues, you really, you don't have a standing. You don't have a footing in that. You're going to lose every time.
Yeah.
Your best weapon is, filibustering, being on the floor, debating, trying to get it out. But when it's time to be ran over, it's nothing you can do. You can stand in front of the train, you can move out the way.
Yeah.
It's going to pass. So that is like probably the hardest part of it. But when you're the minority, you get to function in ways like from behind the scene. Like the majority party is going to fight each other. They're going to care about
all the time.
they're going to, you got Freedom Caucus, you got Tea Party, you got all these different layers of people within the party.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you're in the majority to blame the minority, right? And so you can still do it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you have all the votes and you don't actually need us, you're in charge. And so a lot of it is being able to operate with a safety net, being able to do whatever you want to do. Not necessarily you can be unapologetic with it. You don't have to worry about it because it's going to fall on who's in charge at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so you can be effective that way. And just being in an area where my area is more of a moderate Republican area, I have to be able to function in a different altitude anyway because it's just different. I'm in a different lane altogether. I'm not in Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, Huntsville. I'm in East Alabama. It's a moderate area.
Wow. You know what's crazy about that? Because I'm in the majority party, right?
Yeah.
So we know that with 103 votes, we can move any piece of legislation we want.
Yeah.
You mentioned different caucuses, which is interesting because you talked about the Freedom Caucus and the Tea Party. And back in New York, we have, the WFP, Working Families Party. We have the DSA, the Democratic Social of America. We have moderate Democrats. Like we have a bunch of fractions within our caucus, which we tote as our biggest strength. Like our diversity is our strength in New York. But to your point, it creates obstacles when you're trying to pass bills, right? Because how do you move the further left of the party or the pragmatics or the moderates in the party to see things in a different way? So it's all interesting. And I think it all revolves around constituent services and what people are telling us on the ground. I know in New York, for instance, housing is the biggest issue. I think you and I talked about this last night. We were just wrapping over drinks and I said, a 3-bedroom apartment in my district, I looked it up recently, $7,500 a month. So that is like a big thing for New Yorkers. Childcare, $31,000 if you're sending your kid to a daycare, just making it so expensive. Like, what are the things in Alabama that your constituents are talking to you about that's their big obstacles?
Same thing. It's just not.
That's crazy.
It's just not $7,500, right?
He's like, it's housing, but it ain't that.
Yeah. Because you got to think about it. The median income in Alabama is probably $60,000 at best, right? So when you
know what's crazy about that though? There's areas in New York City where that's the medium income.
Yeah, $7,500 would never be a thing. But even if someone had to pay $2,000. I mean, that is to them. That's in Alabama. That's $7,500, right? And you talk about, I don't know what it costs to buy a house in New York, but it costs around about $350,000 to get a new house in my area in Alabama, right? And so
mine is $1.5 million.
Yeah,
which is just it's nuts. Like, what's 20% down on 1.5?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's it. Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
So the interesting thing is that our growth. And especially in my area, I'm in the second fastest growing area in Alabama because we have Auburn University, a major university that brings in 10,000 freshmen each year.
Incredible.
Well, you see just a lot of people in general from Oregon, New York, all these different places where in your area is 1.5. My area is 350,000. You have a lot of migration coming down to the South.
Absolutely.
Because it's affordable, right?
Yeah.
People feel like even though there are things that are going on in the South that you may or may not like when it comes to cost. Like it costs a lot for Alabamians.
Yeah.
But someone who's making a decent salary that can work remote, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, all those places are ideal places for people to move because it's affordable.
That's crazy though, because that sounds like what we experience in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
Brooklyn is what we call the epicenter of gentrification, right? Where people with a little bit more means came to the neighborhood, and the dollar coffee turned into $4.50,
Yeah.
right? And you got to throw a tip on it because the machine is selling you 15, 18, 22%. You're like, bro, I just paid $4.50 for the coffee, but we've seen the prices go up.
Yeah.
Where Brooklyn was never that. Like it was always what we call the bed and breakfast neighborhood, where people came and people lived. People worked in the city. We never had city functions. Now we got the Barclays Center. We got all kind of activities. He was just in Brooklyn with me recently kicking it. And I can't tell you, like the blocks as we walk down them, how the development just kind of swung really quickly over the last 10 to 20 years. But you're right. No matter what that number is, when you talk about 350, while that seems affordable to somebody who's making, six figures here in New York that can work remote, that's certainly a problem for the locals, and particularly for college kids who are leaving from those universities. You talk about 10,000 kids coming in a year. They want to probably be rooted like you and help make a difference in their neighborhood, but they can't afford that down payment. So how are y'all helping? How are y'all addressing both the long-term needs of keeping talent in Alabama and the immediacy of it, right? So it's like the long-term goals as a lawmaker, like how do we fix the problem long-term? But then what do we do right now in the stopgap to keep people from leaving Alabama, or to keep too many folks from coming in that's going to push the locals out?
Yeah. So I was a part of a group. It was a commission led by the governor. I was appointed to this commission. It was called Innovate Alabama. And we were supposed to look at innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, and how to foster that in this 21st century. And what does that look like? And it was something that the governor called Dr. Condoleezza Rice. She's a native of Alabama, and she does a lot of things in Stanford.
Condoleezza Rice, the former Secretary of State. Wow.
Yeah. So
you said it so casually. She's a native.
Yeah. So she kind of helped us. She came and brought some business fellows over to Alabama, and they started off in Huntsville, which is the top of Alabama, all the way down to Mobile, and they visited every area cluster in Alabama, and they came up with a 100-page report. And so what we found out is that you not only do you have to have an income, right? You have to have livable communities, right? You have to have recreation, parks, outdoors, canoeing. You have to have like things like Starbucks and, different stuff like that where people want to feel like, especially young people, they want to feel like they belong.
They could be outside
to a community, right? They don't just want to be a part of a community. They want to feel like they belong. They want to have food options, things of that nature. And so on one end, it was like, okay, we need more jobs, right? But it wasn't like the most pressing thing. It was like, how do you make a holistic experience for young people or a young person to feel like they belong? And so we've been working on that. We've been doing things around incentives for like upgrading parks and bike lanes. We've been doing things like really looking at how we foster technology and innovation and the jobs we bring in, and do they kind of align with what we see as far as higher education. One other thing we're looking at, it's something that we call hard hat or third grade to hard hat. What is happening in the third grade right now that we can equip them with future jobs, right? If the thing is technology and all those things, we need to look at science and math, right? How proficient is a third grader right now in science and math? Because in the next 20 years or 15 years, they'll be in the job market. Do we have the job that they want, right? And so those are the kind of things that we look at. Of course, you understand with abatements and tax incentives, we try to bring a lot of industry in. Defense is one of the things we're bringing in. Aviation is one of the things we're bringing in. So we're just bringing in a lot of jobs that are higher paying than most generations would have. And as we're just looking at it from that component and how we continue to build on that, it just kind of just figuring out where are we now? And where are we gonna be? That's why I started the Quantum Evaluation Task Force to look at quantum computing and how that'll affect Alabama. We understand that I think it's a number of 250,000 to 300,000 jobs by 2030 will impact some way. United States, every state will be different, but what does that look like? What industry are we bringing in? What industries do we already have? And what does that look like from a pay standpoint of view? And anything that you look at from a legislative standpoint, we can be divided on a lot of different things. But economic development, growth, jobs, I think that's always kind of like a bipartisan thing, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to keep that job from going to New York, and I'm trying to get it.
And I'm trying to get it from Alabama right now.
Yeah. So that's kind of the play. And
That
so you have to
competitive
keep
nature.
kind of look at it from a long standpoint of view. You know, in cities in the South like Alabama, you know, the disheartening thing is we're more looking at return on investment when it comes to college, right? So you know your liberal arts and all those things.
Yeah.
We're looking at that like it's not really bringing in. You know, it's you need it, right? Those are the thinkers. Those are the people that are going to bring forth the ideas.
But you need more doers.
So it's going to be it's preliminary now, but there's going to be a component where if colleges are not showing you that they actually have a return on investment, and you know the students that are going there, that there may be implications around funding, because that's how it started. So. And that is built around what we were talking about as far as retention, recruitment, and all those things as well. Because why the state sees like, why do we give money?
Yeah,
we got to not get return on investment on the money, right? And you're gonna start just seeing probably more conservative, moderate areas look at that, because they're trying to eliminate the waste. At the end of the day, not necessarily that I agree with it, but on a business capitalistic level, I can understand it.
Got you. Now, we talk a lot about legislation and how hard it is in the minority party to pass bills. Sometimes I always say that bills are not always about getting your bill passed, sometimes it's about animating an issue.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about like, how do I actually move the pieces on the chessboard to get this over the finish line by any means necessary? Right. I look at a bill like Melanie's Law that I did, which is a bipartisan bill. I worked with a Republican on the domestic violence bill. That was one of the proudest moments I had in the legislature, because it was able to get both sides to agree. I think we had one person vote down on the bill, which was like incredible. What's that legislation that you either passed that felt like that was your golden moment legislatively, or a bill that you have that was like, you ain't passed it yet, but you think this is your moment, this is your issue?
It was 3 moments, right? Yeah. So and 2 of them happened at the same time. It was in 2021. I was carrying 2 pieces of legislation. One was centered around starting funding for on the state level. It was supplemental funding, right? And so we understand on the state level sometimes you can get funding, but you need some kind of matching fund on the federal level to kind of help startups with things like salaries and commercialization and things of that nature. So I brought a bill around STTR and SBIR, and those are just like research grants that you get on the state level and on the federal level. And so what we did, understanding that, you know, our neighbors like Georgia and North Carolina really does it well, they were doing supplemental funding, and it was helping with startups. It was helping with entrepreneurship in their area. So I got to bring that piece of legislation in concert with Innovate Alabama converting from a commission to a corporation. And that was bipartisan, right? That was one of the biggest bipartisan bills since I've been there, right? And I was a part of it. And Innovate Alabama is something that is continuing to grow, is to continuing to kind of be one of those things that's prevalent. So I was kind of like, I felt like I was a part of history, right?
Yeah,
and so
definitely.
The other one was, when I first got elected, I went to a local high school career day, started talking about, you know, my trajectory, my matriculation, how do I get to being a lawmaker? And one thing that I accredited as being effective lawmaker and just kind of being like optimistic and all those things, I was like, I do yoga, right?
You know, it's funny you say this, because this is the exact moment I started following you. Like, one, your discipline as it pertains to yoga, wellness, and your diet is incredible. Like last night, let me be very clear. Last night, I sat down and had a 40-piece lasagna dish. My man sat there, looked at it and said, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. This is not good for my mental health or my physical body right now. We're talking about the yoga piece.
Yeah, so, I left and went to North Carolina State. You know, that's where I played football. So I'm thinking like, I get back to Alabama, I'm thinking that the world has progressed a little bit. I don't think it's the same Alabama when I left, because everything is going on and just people are just more open to new ideas. So I get back, and, you know, I'm a yoga instructor. I've taught at gyms. I actually even taught yoga at my church as an instructor as well. So my idea of yoga is more like, it's mainstream. Everybody's doing it. And so I get to this school and I'm talking about it, and they tell me that yoga is banned in Alabama. I was like, banned? Like, what you mean? Like, banned? Like, you can't do yoga in Alabama in public schools, right? And
That's
I say,
crazy, by the
well,
way.
why was it banned? So I'm looking it up. In 1993, a parent complains to the State Board of Education that their kid puts in a relaxation tape that they got from school and they became visibly high. That was the notion of it. That one parent had enough power to pretty much ban yoga entirely in the K through 12.
It's one person always that doesn't like an issue, that makes it an issue and then gets other people on board. That's crazy.
Yeah. So
they banned yoga in public schools in Alabama.
In 1993, right?
New York, you listening? You listen to New York?
So I go on to say, well, sometimes you have these laws is on the book that don't mean anything because 1993 was just a different time. So I go and introduce this bill and like, oh, it's going to be easy. And I didn't understand foundationally how much people believed in Christianity, the Bible Belt state, and all those things. So it became where yoga was Hinduism, and essentially it was Christianity versus Hinduism, right? And so I wasn't fighting a yoga battle. I was fighting more of a spiritual, religious battle, and it became one of those things that it became very muddy. The bill went from, you're never going to pass this bill in this body ever, until 3 years later, me passing the bill in the House and the Senate and becoming law. So that was more a testament of relationship building coalition, educating and all that, and just being persistent, understanding that it may be no today, but tomorrow it'll be a yes. So that was one of the moments where wasn't anybody on my side. It was just like me grinding it out, finding advocates, finding people who support it, and then I just was able to get people to, at the end of the day, vote on it. And I think that's powerful.
That's incredible.
And when you think about the legislative process, how bills become law, that was one of my moments where like, hey, I felt like I had power.
It's crazy because I think people don't realize how hard it is. When you say you pass a bill, I think right now I've had somewhere between 15 and 20 bills signed into law by the governor. Yeah. Right. And you can say that's a testament to being the majority state or being the majority party in the state. But it's hard because you got to go through your House, then you got to go through the Senate, then you got to go through the governor. And then when it gets to her desk, they got to go through her legal team or his legal team. And it's incredibly hard. So like any feat of passing any bill, no matter how minor it seems or how major the bill is a testament to just the sheer hard work of a legislator. So I commend you on that. Yeah. I think what's interesting about that when we talk about young lawmakers is we bring a different perspective to the work. Yeah. And I think particularly, we're in D.C. this weekend, and America just had a birthday that was like 250, I think. She's 250 years old. You and I are in our 40s, right? But like, how do young lawmakers show up differently, and what perspective do we bring that helps both our older colleagues and also helps bring others behind us? Because I think for too long you talked about, when we were wrapping off set, about a lawmaker in your state who's 88. In the next election, they'll probably be 92. And if they run,
they'll be running
probably, and they can probably win in 92, right? How do we help balance that divide between somebody who's been through so much of life and for us who's at that midway point of our journey, and then still trying to help those who are trying to figure out, why am I even engaged in this process called democracy?
I think what people always forget is everybody was young at some point, right? The civil rights movement in Alabama wasn't led by 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds. It was like people that were 19, 20, like MLK was 25 years old, right? And so it's this notion that young people can't lead, or, young people are green, they don't know what's going on. But in every movement that has been significant in history, I feel like young people have been a part of it. Absolutely. And I think that's something that the old guard, however you want to put it, right? The powers that be, that they forget sometimes. That one time you were young, one time you marched, one time you were told that you were too young to lead. And, essentially, back in those days, you had to wait your turn. And we're just in a new era where you don't have to wait your turn. There's no hierarchy. It's like, if I'm good for the job, I'm good for the job. Yeah. And I think that is the disconnection between generations, is that one feels they had to wait. It's almost like they're envious.
It's the rite of passage.
Right? Yeah. Like, wow, you
I'm not
got
sure
this.
why, but you got to do it. I had to do it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because we see in corporate America, we see a bunch of young executives and
Yeah.
CEOs. I think the CEO of Red Lobster recently just like built Red Lobster back from bankruptcy, right?
Yeah.
And I think he was involved in Olive Garden prior to that and helping to rebuild that. But in government, for some reason, it's like, nah, you gotta wait till you a little more seasoned before you get an opportunity to serve. And I think it's interesting because those two worlds, both politics and business, they move in the same way in some respects, right? I think you talked about how in Alabama you guys are looking at ROI, right? Mm-hmm. That's a term they use in corporate America forever, right? Exactly. And in government we use the term of service, right? And it's all the same thing. We're all trying to meet a goal point. Yeah. It's just a matter of finding different obstacles and different ways to get to that end goal. So it's kind of interesting. How do we get more young people engaged in the process? I think what I'm seeing now is a lot of young people who are involved specifically in advocacy. Yeah. How do they move from advocates to becoming elected? You talk about having a nonprofit or, being at college there, starting your nonprofit, being in the advocate space, and then making that transition. Do you think young people think about that now? Or do you think younger people than us are kind of like, government doesn't work, I'm going to just stick to my advocacy?
I think they want to just be a part of a moment, right? Like it's these different times in history where you just want to be on the right side of history. And I think even with the Montgomery boycott, it was like 300 and something days, right? Like we sometimes as, young people, we see stuff as like instant. One protest, one march, to them that's substance, right? But it doesn't really move the needle of where we need to go. And so part of it is, you could be on the ground, you could be an advocate, but are you voting? Are you leading voter education? Are you letting people know about issues that they should be concerned about? Or are we just about marching and just being a part of this movement because it comes with a little bit of influence and popularity and all those things? And so if we could move young people from wanting to be famous and to wanting to be effective, we could do a better job. And I think that just become about being a part of the process. Yeah. We do understand that our democracy is weak now, right? Like people don't really believe in government. Sometimes people in government don't even believe in government because it's so many things that are happening with the courts, what's happening in Congress and the U.S. Senate and how that's trickling down to the state level. And all the rules of engagement, all the rules that they said were rules are not rules now.
They're norms.
Yeah, for us as lawmakers, how do we restore that in a way where we can say, hey, there's still issues that people care about. There are still good lawmakers. How can we be mentors to the next generation to build a gap? How can we get them involved? And so one thing that we're kind of doing in this upcoming election is called Reach the 169. It's literally 119,000 African Americans that are infrequent voters in Alabama. And we're trying to figure out how we reconnect with those voters. What is it that we need to do to make sure and connect with them to issues that they care about? Why are you not voting in every election? Why are you an infrequent voter? What do you care about? This next election is important because these things are on the ballot. We're not telling you who to vote for, but we think that voting is something that is afforded to everyone, and you need to take an opportunity to actually at least exercise it. Because if it didn't matter, we wouldn't suppress votes in Alabama. We would have early voting. We would have no excuse absentee, right? We would have all these things that would make it easier to vote. But Alabama is just one of those places that we suppress votes to the point where we want to be able to dictate who wins and loses. We rather 100 people vote than 100,000 people vote because it's easier to count 100 people, right? Yeah. And so when you kind of started to equate politics with like issues, affordability, gas, groceries, housing, all those things, and it resonates, I think that works better for young people. But you have to bring them in the fold. You have to let them be a part of the process. You even have to hold forums and educate because most people don't actually know what we do, right? At the end of the day, they really don't.
90% of our constituents don't. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I get called outside of my title.
Yeah.
I'm called senator, congressman.
Yeah.
I named my son senator, so I messed up with that, right? But other than that, I get called congressman, council member. And when they come in the office, God bless them, they're just looking to get their problem solved.
That's right.
Right? And they don't really care what your title is.
Mhm.
They know that Con Edison or the utility company just cut their gas or they water off.
Yeah.
They know that they rent skyrocketed and at least don't look funny.
That's right.
They know that they change the short on Department of Labor stuff. And we're just trying to figure out how to short gap and fix those solutions for them. So I think you're right. People just want to know what government does,
Yeah.
how we show up for them, and what are the tangible results. That's really interesting. I mean, what's one thing I think, being here in D.C., Future Caucus year after year, what's the one thing you've learned from other states that you brought back home to Alabama?
I mean,
anything.
no idea is too big, right? The thing about being in a place like Alabama, you tend to think small when it comes to what you can do, right? Like if you're in the minority, especially, even if you're in the majority, right? Like there's agendas that are pushed each and every year. You know that. Like there's agendas that are pushed in New York. There's those things that are pushed in Alabama. And a lot of times they're not things of the people. They're not, when you do the poll about what people really care about and what we actually do as a state, sometimes they don't match up, right? Because it's more about the interest groups. It's more about what other people want that, that pretty much have the power, the money, and the influence to do it. And so kind of when we look at things like that, it's interesting when we look at things like transportation, because those are things that are far-fetched.
Yeah.
And somewhere like, especially like, in Opelika, right? We don't have a railing system for all those things, but that is something that continues to come up.
But it's crazy when you think about it, right? Think about an issue like as small as transportation, which is a huge thing. Like New York, we talk about there's train stations and buses everywhere.
Yeah.
Like to the point we want to make buses free.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And fast in New York City, right?
Yeah.
But in places across the country, if somebody can't pay their gas bill in terms of the cost of putting gas in their car, there's no other option. They can't even jump on a train. So like why we can't fix federal gas prices or international oil prices, we could fix a small thing like making sure buses and trains are something that gives people another option.
Exactly.
Because it's all about options.
That's
It's
right,
not really saying you got to take the train or the bus, but it's saying if you have the option and this price point fits you, then make it work for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's all government should do is create guardrails and create options.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to dream big. Maybe I may not pass this particular bill today that I seen in New York or Connecticut or whatever, but it's something to start a conversation around and see, because it's also an issue, right? In the rural area, if you don't have a car, you live like an hour or two from the nearest hospital, so or a doctor, right? You don't have doctors in every county in Alabama. You just know who's going to live in a rural area where the schools are, pretty much trash. The infrastructure is not good. Like, there's nothing good in those areas. So why would someone who spent 13 years paying to go to college to actually become a medical doctor move into a location where there is nothing, right? And so you don't have doctors in their area. And so sometimes doctors have to travel to those areas. Sometimes there's nurse practitioners. And so we have to do things like, as a state, is like, how do we get people from those areas? How do we incentivize them to come back? Because it's more likely that somebody from rural Alabama would come back to rural Alabama.
It's somebody just coming in for the first time.
Yeah. So we look at things like that, and because those are needs as well. So there are things that I see in other states that could be effective in Alabama, even if it's not right now. It will be at some point. And a lot of times when you're at the forefront of the conversation, like I am with quantum, nobody knows what that is in Alabama, right? It's like a mystery, but they keep hearing it. But I'm beating the drum, and at some point they can be like, well, Jeremy Gray was talking about quantum.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to tap into this because it's something that's going to be beneficial to Alabama. But without the conversation or even me bringing it up, you don't have those opportunities. So I think that's where, coming to Future Caucus, talking to different lawmakers, just seeing what they're doing, and just seeing what I may be doing, because maybe things I'm doing in Alabama that you hadn't thought about, because sometimes simple stuff.
So I ain't gonna hold you. I look at a lot of bills from members who are in my party, but in other states where they can't get it passed.
Yeah.
And I do it in New York, and it seemed like a big idea.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the idea that someone else thought of in another state.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of my off session really just working on like identifying smart issues. And there's a bunch of them that came out of Alabama. So I think you're absolutely right in terms of like just being curious, being creative, And I think, even our last election in New York City specifically told us about the bigness of ideas and how people gravitate to big ideas. Whether you agree or disagree with the mayor of New York City, I think one thing we all know across the country is that he's a guy with a lot of ideas and some big ideas for how he wants to transform government.
And he's tackling issues that people care about. Like, pragmatic business people, like, well, how you going to pay for it? But the common person, the man, not thinking about how you going to pay for it. If you saying free transportation, you saying you saying all the things that people care about.
Yeah.
Now
figure it out. Y'all go figure it out. Like, I got the ideas. Lawmakers, go figure this out real quick and get back to me.
And at the end of the day, a lot of stuff around politics is a business plan.
Yeah.
You go to the bank, you ask for money, you have a good business plan, you got good credit and all those things, they'll give you the money.
Yeah.
But they're not asking you to stick directly to the business plan. As long as you have some result, some productivity, some benchmark, to say you're kind of moving in the right direction. Essentially, that's what campaigns are. There are business plans, there are ideas that you want to do, right? But it's a process to it.
And it's funny because your credit score is kind of like how we started the conversation. It is the political capital you have in that moment that you can spend, that people trust enough to allow you to do those ideas. Let me ask you a couple final questions as we wind down. Is in a couple of years, I know you and I talk about this all the time. This is a great opportunity to serve our communities, be in this age where we have information, youth on our side, and wind at our back. What's your legacy like in a few years when you leave the State House? What are people going to say about Rep. Jeremy Gray when you walk out those doors in that chamber for the final time?
How I look at anything in life is just that when I leave something, I want them to say, hey, Jeremy Gray got shit done.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
facts.
I mean, I got all the accolades. I got all those things. They don't really mean much once you get so many.
Yeah.
But if I leave the State House tomorrow and they say that Jeremy Gray got shit done, that's a shirt. I'm good.
There.
I'm good with that.
That's the campaign slogan.
Yeah.
Jeremy got shit done.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And so I'm coming to Alabama soon. I got to come pull up on you. You came to Brooklyn, so I owe you that trip. Are you a night owl or are you an early morning person?
Well, I can be both, right?
Of
course, I wake up very early.
You gotta do yoga.
Yeah, I do yoga. I work out in the morning.
Yeah.
I meditate. I do journaling. All those things. So I start my morning pretty early.
What time is early morning for you?
I'm gonna wake up without an alarm clock around about 3 or 4 o'clock. Now may not get up until about 5 because I'm gonna be at the gym around 5:36. And then, I'm probably start after like doing yoga, journaling, and all that, probably start my day like 7:30, 8 o'clock. But I've done all the internal work.
Yeah.
Which
the most important work.
Yeah. Some people think about just the external work, right? That doesn't get you where you want to go just doing stuff externally. I have to do the inner work first.
Yeah.
And then the inner work helps the outer work. And so that is something that, I kind of look at. But, I also go to the cigar bar.
Yeah.
I also go to speakeasies. I go to football games. I do all the things, right? So sometimes I have an early morning. Sometimes I have early morning, late nights.
Yeah.
And sometimes I try to go to bed early, right? But, just sometimes you're kind of in this realm as a visionary, a lawmaker, you're just thinking about things, Thoughts thoughts can keep you up at night, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so if I don't go to bed by at least 10, I'm going to be up thinking like, hey, what's my next move? What's the next thing that I'm trying to do? What's the next piece of legislation? And so I could be both at times. I can tell you as I get older, I want to go to sleep so I can get that rest, and I can reserve that energy. If I do need a late night or hang out, I can, but I try not to have too many back-to-back nights where I'm just out.
Yeah. What's your go-to spot in Alabama? If I fly down tomorrow, where we going?
We're probably going to go to Z&Z. That's my, it's a cigar spot we go to.
Okay.
It's like fellas, hanging out, having conversation, and just kicking it. It's kind of like you go to church to receive God, but you go to cigar bars to just have peace and just chill. So that's one of the spots that I'll take anybody to, is just relaxing, chilling. You don't even have to smoke a cigar. We just hang out and just chop it up. Because that's, at the end of the day, that is the best thing that we can play golf. We have good golf courses, but at the end of the day, it's about camaraderie and hanging out and just having that feel of connecting with people. Because you can be anywhere, but if you're connecting with people and conversation, you may feel like you're in Miami. You don't know.
I love that. What are you currently reading right now?
Right now,
outside of your bills?
I have a what's it called? It's called More Ambition. Is one of the books that I'm reading about having this morality and just these moral values by, while still being ambitious. And what does that look like? And
Mm,
sometimes winning is not always winning, right? You
yeah,
can win something and you lose everything in the process of it. And sometimes being quiet is probably a remedy instead of actually being out in the front and all those things. And so one thing they talk about in that book is Rosa Parks and how she wasn't the first person
no,
to sit on the bus and not give her a seat up. It was women, a lot of women before her, right? But they didn't have, it wasn't the right brand, right? It wasn't the right story to tell. They used her story because she was seen as this quiet lady that, you know, she did things like knitting and, you know, all the
yeah,
things. So just very little, very harmful, but she wasn't. But it was all about like the story that you portray.
yeah,
And sometimes, you know, it takes a Rosa Parks to get things done. Maybe, well, you know, all these people before,
yeah.
Claudette and all these people before could have done it. But when you're, you know, being a part of a movement and you want to move at the right time in the right way, sometimes Rosa Parks is the place to be and the person to kind of present. And she was like instrumental to the boycott movement and all, and, you know, the civil rights movement and all those things. And, you know, people like Fred Gray Sr., who was the civil rights attorney. And so it's just talking about the moment.
It's crazy though, right?
Yeah.
When you think about Alabama
Yeah.
and its place in history,
Yeah.
in terms of where we are now as a country,
Yeah.
is in large part because the movement happening there.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because, like, when people talk about the progressive movement and stuff like that,
Mhm.
we often look at places like New York and California,
Yeah.
but there's nowhere more progressive
Yeah.
than deciding during the 1960s
Yeah.
that we ain't gonna turn around.
That's right.
Ain't
That's
nobody
right.
gonna turn us
That's right.
around.
That's right.
And then we gonna make sure that what starts here in Alabama ricochets throughout this country and throughout the world. So it's just incredible when you think about the idea of what we consider to be progressive versus what actually moves the needle. Favorite restaurant in Alabama?
Well, this is what I would say. I'm not a restaurant person. So,
Okay.
I mean, I will go to one. I like this place called Botanic.
I'm sure
like
it's vegan. I'm sure, yeah.
Well, you know, and it's also, they have a greenhouse. It's like a greenhouse component, whereas
Okay.
a farm to table
Yeah,
component.
yeah.
And so this particular lady, she started Chicken Salad Chick. And this is her pet project. You know, her and her husband, he's more of in agriculture. She's in hospitality, and they kind of mix it together. So you feel like you're in a big greenhouse where plants and waterfalls and things of that nature is very like scenic. So if I had to take someone somewhere, that would probably be it. But my family cooks all the time. I have a big family.
Okay, so
So
you
if
have a Sunday dinner by you.
Yeah, so Sunday
After
dinner is
church.
the spot
Yeah.
that I'm going to take you if you want to vibe, you want
Yeah.
to be around people, you want to have, you know, just be around good people, fun, that's going to, you know, that Southern hospitality feel. I'm going to take you to my family function.
Got you.
Yeah.
Last question. Who is Jeremy Gray off the floor?
Off the floor, I mean, I'm just a laid back dude that at the end of the day, I want to see everybody win around me. And I try to do everything that I could do to help, whether it's spiritual journey, your physical journey, financial. I just want to be helpful. Because at the end of the day, I understand that, you know, wherever I'm going to be, right? I'm going to figure it out, right? But it's not all about me. It's about like how do we get to the finish line? And that's like one of the things that I kind of preach with my homeboys or just my circle. Yeah, we work out together, we smoke cigars together, but what else we gonna do together? Right? Like, are we gonna build together? Because what's the point of having millions of dollars, billions of whatever it is, or hitting certain heights in life where people are envious of you around you because you didn't help them, right? Like, and so not everybody's gonna make it. You can't make everybody drink the water. You know, you can lead them, but you can't make them drink. But part of the process is just giving everybody an opportunity to succeed. And so that's, for me, it's just about Zen. It's just about, you know, how do I make people around me better, even my family? And that's kind of like the component of who I am. And that's why it shows up in service.
And Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me on Off the Floor, live from DC.
Yes, sir.
Next take gonna be in Alabama,
That's
though.
right.
And we're gonna get around that cigar spot, and we're gonna get around that family dinner. Definitely gotta shoot some golf. But Brother, it's always a pleasure to watch your journey and to watch the work you're doing. Thank you on behalf of New York for the work Alabama is doing to transform this country.
For having me. There's a connection between Alabama and New York because a lot of Alabamians played to New York for opportunities. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
They coming back soon. That rent gonna send them back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Off the Floor. This is your host, Brian Cunningham. Join me on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.
The House stands adjourned.